Alright, so this is day 5 of the water cleanse, or I guess the fast, I would say. So I was slightly above my goal. I met my goal yesterday, but I did more meal prep today, so it was a little bit harder to keep up. But I was at 29 gallons, 29.7 gallons. So it's still better, but not as good as yesterday. So, I was a little bit disappointed about that, but I think other than that, I think I've been doing pretty well, being more mindful about my water usage. And also, I've been thinking a lot about like electricity and also like gas and driving and all of that. Those other activities that you wouldn't usually associate with water. But I've been thinking about how water is used through those activities as well, even though it's not obvious and apparent when we're actually like turning on the lights or turning off the lights or driving or anything like that. We don't think about those actions being associated with water usage, but they correlate, which is really interesting. And I just keep thinking about that, and I feel like there's so many times where I've like left the lights on an accident, or I don't, just done silly stuff that, like, I guess wasted a lot of water. So I kind of feel guilty about that. It's kind of sad, but I think this is definitely, like I said in the first video, or in the first post, but it's definitely eye-opening to be able to have the experience of having the opportunity to fast. It's like a privilege to have the opportunity to fast, but it definitely makes you realize that there are people that have way bigger issues, obviously, in their lives. So I remember talking about water and what that symbolizes in the Christian religion. I know I also talked about it in Polynesian culture and folklore, but I've also read a little bit about what it symbolizes in Hinduism and Buddhism. So I learned that water in Buddhism is like the purest form of food. So it's like basically like almost in any other, like in all the other things that I've talked about, it's like the purest and like the most basic like form of life. Or not form of life, but like element, and like it's like the basic element that you would have for life. So it's kind of cool because it's like that's universally recognized, it seems. So I think that's really interesting that water has that symbolism for a lot of different religions and cultures. In Hinduism, it's used as like a sign of like rebirth and renewal and stuff like that, and it just kind of like reminds me of baptism in a way, because like Buddhists like believe in like a thorough cleansing of the mind and the body and the spirit. So water is like heavily associated with those rituals and stuff that they practice in their religion. So I think that's kind of interesting. It's like that's very similar to baptism in the Christian culture, or in the Christian faith. So I think that it's interesting that even though like these, like I guess like Christianity and like Buddhism and Hinduism all stem from different places, water is, I mean, universally recognized as a symbol of like renewal and rebirth and just like the most important element for life, all life. So I think that's really interesting, and I think that is also very interesting that in the early, in like the beginnings of these religions and stuff like that, I feel like water was definitely coveted more. I think the value of water was recognized more, and I think that's also why it was so sacred. And so I think that maybe we've lost that a little bit. And I know I've said it before in one of my videos, but I definitely think that we take it for granted a lot. And it just makes me think about all of the people in the world that have to struggle to get their water. And like, it's just not fair. This doesn't really correlate to the water fast, but I remember reading in our assignment that this is something that we should be thinking about, is basically different living situations throughout the world, and how people that are in industrialized country, or, you know, first world, more developed countries, if we change some of our ways, then we can help people in less developed countries. But I was watching this video today about, like, you know, something silly like people cooking on cruise ships, and their weekly budget, at least on the Royal Caribbean cruises, their weekly budget for food is $1 million. And I was like, imagine if we spent $1 million on people that were starving rather than lazy people that were on cruise ships. I mean, I guess I can't say people are lazy that go on cruise ships, but imagine if we spent $1 million on people that actually needed food. And the fact that it's like someone didn't think about that, you know, it's like, it makes me want to cry because it just seems so wasteful. And then you think about how much of that went to waste, and it just is really depressing. But even though that doesn't necessarily correlate directly to water, it just makes you think about all of the stuff that people in more developed countries don't think about. And it's really frustrating, and it just really shows that we need to think of ourselves as one people on the planet. We are all one people. And we need to have more humanity, I think, because there's just a huge disproportion. And I know we're going to talk more about environmental ethics and stuff like that, so I think maybe that's what I'll start researching tomorrow, is probably ethics that go into water usage and stuff like that. I know I talked about it in my day 3 video with avocados and farming in California, but I think I'm gonna try to research it a little bit more tomorrow. But this has definitely been a depressing day. So yeah, I think that tomorrow I will do better keeping these things in mind, and I will post again.